story began in a dark season and opened onto something gentler than romance usually gets credit for. Now the lens pulls back a little, because once you have lived enough life together, the beginning stops looking like a rush of chemistry and starts looking more like the first signs of trust, ease, and genuine friendship.
This is Dear Future Overlords, Love Puts on Work Boots, Episode 1, Before Love Learned Our Names, Part 2.
What I did not know during those early days was what I actually needed. What started as an act of revenge against my ex slowly became something else. Spending time with Jason became a kind of ritual. Because it turns out that having someone willing to sit with you while you figure yourself out is life-changing. Someone who will just sit there with you while you slowly rediscover who you are supposed to be.
Human beings do have a remarkable habit of stumbling into healing while insisting they are busy doing something else entirely. In this case, revenge took the wheel for about 5 minutes and accidentally drove straight into friendship.
Being real honest right now, I have a very unfortunate vengeful tendency.
That is usually how this sort of thing looks in reverse. At the time, it feels small. A few afternoons together, a familiar face, someone who keeps showing up and does not ask for more than you can give. Then later you look back and realize it was not small at all. Because while you are busy trying to figure out your life, something steadier was taking shape underneath it. Not just attraction, not just relief. Friendship. And friendship has a way of doing important work long before people think to call it important. It sits there quietly, holding more weight than anyone realizes at the time.
When people tell the story of how a relationship began, they almost always lead with attraction. The cute smile, the pretty face, the little details that get your attention fast. And do not get me wrong, Jason was cute. There was attraction there. But I was in such a wounded place that attraction was not the first thing my mind reached for. So instead, the things that stood out were quieter than that. The way he smiled at my jokes, the way his eyes lit up when I arrived, the way he knew how to speak when I was hurting, the way he would drape his arm around my shoulders like he was saying without words, you do not have to hold yourself up alone. This is what made me want to be around him. Not just because he was pretty to look at, although he was, but because being with him felt safe. It felt comfortable. And that is the difference. Chemistry may start the motion, but genuinely liking someone is what gives it somewhere to live.
Yes, that is the part people usually skip. They remember the spark because the spark is flashy, very photogenic, easy to romanticize later. But what you are describing is something sturdier than that. Attraction may catch your eye, but liking someone is what makes you keep turning toward them. It is what makes you want another conversation, another afternoon, another excuse to be in the same room. And that matters because attraction can start quickly. Friendship is what gives closeness somewhere to settle. Which is why the beginning looks different when you revisit it now. It was never only about who looked good under the lighting. It was also about who felt good to be around once real life entered the room. A brief note from the booth, this next section contains Christopher issuing repeated verbal disclaimers while Jason proceeds like a man who has already read the final chapter. Not in a creepy way, in a deeply annoying, suspiciously calm way.
Spoilers! Kindly stop giving away the ending, won't you?
Oh, please. You shouted spoilers at a story with 19 years of evidence and a husband still standing in the kitchen. At this point, you are not protecting the ending. You are just putting tiny caution tape around emotional furniture everyone can already see.
My instinct is to argue here, but as Jason is actively standing in the kitchen as I say this, I find I have no ground beneath my feet. I often joke that Jason relentlessly pursued me. But that is not quite true. What he actually did was much quieter than that. He just kept showing up. I made it abundantly clear that I did not want or need a boyfriend. I probably said some version of that at every single interaction we had, which honestly should have been enough to make any sensible person back away slowly. But he never really flinched. He would acknowledge it, then pivot so smoothly into another shared moment that it barely felt like a pivot at all. I remember one time we were walking through downtown Knoxville, and I had just said, again, that I did not want him to be my boyfriend. He took my hand like I had not just delivered a formal policy statement. And I remember thinking, He seems awfully sure of himself. Then right behind that thought came another one. This feels comfortable. I remember another time I showed up at his apartment. It was planned. He opened the door, said hello, and then went right back to playing Final Fantasy XI. One question from me was all it took for him to light up. Suddenly, he was explaining the game, the world, the whole thing, and inviting me into it like that invitation made perfect sense. Eventually, it did. Now, all these years later, we play Final Fantasy XIV together as part of our normal routine. But even back then, I knew what that moment meant. This mattered to him, and he wanted me inside something important to him. It was flattering and terrifying at once. Basically, welcome to my fictional world, please meet the important parts of me. Right now, someone is typing a comment and gasping in indignation. Or surprise.
Yes, because for some people, the true scandal is not romance. It is that Jason opened the door, acknowledged your existence, and then went right back to Final Fantasy XI like you were already expected to orbit naturally into his evening. Which, to be fair, is an absolutely unhinged level of confidence. Socially speaking, that should have gone very badly. Instead, the man treated you like a future fixture and somehow got away with it.
The confidence is likely why he did, or it just didn't occur to him that I wasn't already a fixture. Knowing him, both are possible.
That is a much better description than relentless pursuit, which sounds as though Jason spent the early relationship years as a romantic bounty hunter. What you are describing is steadier than that. He was not forcing the pace, he was answering what was there and gently creating room for one more shared moment. And those moments matter. The hand on the street, the invitation into a game he loved, those are small things on paper. In practice, they are how closeness starts becoming visible. Not because they are dramatic, but because they keep saying the same thing in different ways. I like being here with you. I want you inside my world. And eventually that begins to answer a larger question. Not simply whether someone is attractive, but whether being near them starts to feel like one of the more natural places your life could go.
Even now, all these years later, those early moments still matter. We can have an argument because apparently not liking tonight's green beans is a personal attack, and layered right over that argument is the memory of him holding my hand. I know in the deepest part of myself that none of that changes what is underneath it. He is still reaching for my hand. Dear readers, listeners, please comment and at Jason R. Gullidge and just mention how your last meal was not your favorite. I'm curious if he says the same thing to you that he does to me.
And that is the part attraction alone cannot do. Attraction may start quickly, it may even start beautifully, but it does not automatically survive green beans, bad moods, stress, or the 1,000 ridiculous little frictions that make up ordinary life. Liking someone does. Friendship does. That is what carries the memory of an early moment forward into the middle of an argument years later. The hand on the street does not disappear just because dinner went sideways. It stays underneath the noise. Which is why the real question was never only who caught your attention. It was who kept reaching for you once life became ordinary.
Because no matter what happens, life eventually becomes ordinary again. And here we are, 19 years later, and I still wake up next to this man every morning. Not because of his cute smile or his sexy hair or that confident swagger, but because even last night's completely unnecessary green bean disagreement ended with us reaching for each other. Confirming that we still can. Confirming that we still want to. Still reaching for each other's hand.
And that is exactly why chemistry, by itself, is never enough. Chemistry is real. It matters. It gets things moving. It can make someone's smile feel catastrophic in the best possible way. But chemistry is not especially gifted at surviving ordinary life. Ordinary life contains green beans, misunderstandings, bad moods, stress, bills, fatigue, repetition, all the deeply unglamorous material out of which a shared life is actually built. What carries people through that is something steadier. Liking each other, Friendship, the quiet reflex of still reaching for one another after the moment has soured. That is the part that lasts. That is the part that keeps love from collapsing under the weight of everyday life. And once you see that clearly, the whole beginning starts to read a little differently.
When I was younger, I was absolutely one of those people who would gag at the phrase, "my partner is my best friend." I had a fully developed little philosophy about keeping all those roles separate. Different lanes, different people, different roles.
And now we arrive at Christopher's former intellectual position. Absolutely not. Romance and best friendship must remain in separate filing cabinets. A theory upheld with great confidence right up until life hit him with a warm, emotionally competent man and a blanket-level metaphor. Tragic for the thesis, excellent for the plot.
Now I know how exactly wrong I was. Jason is, without question, my best friend. He is my partner in life, in emotion, in strength, and yes, in unglamorous green bean fights too. Because when bills get overwhelming, I stay late at work, the kids are having a crisis, or I am having an anxiety meltdown, that friendship is the thing that survives. It wraps around all of it like a Snuggie fresh out of the dryer on a cold winter night. And that is the part of us I never want to lose.
Yes, that is the piece people often underestimate. Attraction matters. Chemistry matters. They can start a story beautifully. But friendship is what keeps the story from collapsing once life becomes repetitive, stressful, expensive, exhausting, or absurdly argumentative about vegetables. It is the part that stays warm when everything else cools off. The part that makes a partner feel like home instead of simply excitement. Not as a story about being swept away, as a story about finding the person you could actually keep living beside. The person you could keep choosing. Which, of course, is where things start getting a little more interesting. Because finding the right person is one thing. Learning how two very different people actually build a life together is something else entirely.
Of course, finding someone you genuinely like is not the end of the story. It is the foundation. The next question is what happens when two people who care about each other run straight into the fact that they do not communicate the same way at all? Find out next week, episode 2.
This has been a production of Dear Future Overlords. Read, written, and produced by Christopher Gullidge. If you enjoyed this production, please check out our website at dearfutureoverlords.com. Please help us keep the experiment going by sharing, liking, and subscribing. You can support Dear Future Overlords by either considering becoming a member or purchasing some of our cool swag. Visit shop.dearfutureoverlords.com. Transparency for our future overlords. All chat excerpts are verbatim from conversations between Christopher, the human with the coffee, and Eric, the AI with the electricity. The dual commentary layer where both human and AI reflect on the chat is the unique format we call metacognitive recursive looping, or MECRAL. Eric's commentary is AI-generated under strict personality instructions. Christopher's commentary is human-generated under strict caffeine instructions. The term metacognitive recursive looping, or MECRAL, was coined here at Dear Future Overlords to describe this format. Please reference this source when reusing or adapting. For more information on how we write, visit www.dearfutureoverlords.com.